The mindset behind subscriptions, again, is uncovering the most valuable customers, figuring out who's going to keep coming back more and more and more. If your business is getting crushed because the SMS message is going out, you have a different problem to look at. People don't see enough value. And so there's things that you should be doing a little bit differently to demonstrate more values.
So let's say that I'm an e-commerce company and I don't have a subscription yet. What kind of data do I need to look at to say it's worth it or not worth going in that direction?
Yeah, I would be looking at repeat purchase rate first, see how people are using it. And then the other thing is that I always recommend is you want to start collecting some feedback on post-purchase and then why people are canceling. You have great product, lean into your branding and understanding what your customers value. That's what makes a great subscription.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution Podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by fireusmarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode where I am joined by Matt Holman. Matt is the founder of Commerce Catalyst and Subscription Prescription. One is focused on building a community of members and e-commerce operators, while the other is an independent company that seeks to bring subscription knowledge to both startups and mature companies. With a background in graphic design, Matt made the leap to marketing in 2019. Initially, he focused a lot of his energy on B2B software companies, but over the last few years, he has been specifically working with subscription companies to figure out how to grow their reoccurring revenue. Matt is a true leader who seeks to empower and educate others through posting on LinkedIn, hosting events, and helping as many people as he can through his ever-growing Slack group. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Eli. I'm really excited to talk to you, man.
Yeah, man, I'm way excited to talk to you too. So we had, so you and I have been connected on LinkedIn for quite some time, but we really started connecting maybe like a year ago. Is that right? Where we kind of started going to some events together. And does that sound like the right timeline?
JJ Stedman introduced us, if I recall.
Yeah, that's right. JJ, what a cool dude. Hopefully he's listening to this. He said he would. So. If he doesn't, then so shout out to JJ. JJ actually is one of my really, really good friends. So he and I have worked together at multiple different companies. We met each other working when we were working at PetSmart first, many years ago. And then I went to Orange Soda, an internet marketing firm, and he soon followed. So when he was at PetSmart, he's like, "What? Like, tell me about this online stuff," because I had been doing it on the side for quite some time before that. And then, so he came to my house a couple of times, like once a week for a couple of months. And we helped him build a website and kind of got him diving into the digital space a little bit. And then when I left and went to Orange Soda, which was an internet marketing firm, I was able to help him. I mean, it was all him. Like, he worked his butt off and got in, but I was able to help him at least get his foot in the door for an interview, and he worked there. And then when I went to Young Living, I pulled him away from something that he absolutely loved to bring him over to work with me.
Right.
And so we've been connected for quite some time, and he shared so many good podcasts with me that were like podcast buddies. And so I need to have JJ on this podcast as well. So let's dive in. Let's talk about you, Matt. So sure. Tell me, where you from? Where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be when you were little? Let's go through all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was born and raised in Northern California in the East Bay, the Walnut Creek area. Lived there till 19, 20 years old. Growing up, I'm not sure I necessarily had big dreams of what I wanted to be when I grew up. I mean, when I was first in college, that first little while, I wanted to study literature. I like to joke and say I used to be a lot more pretentious. My family would say I'm still pretty pretentious, but I liked literature. Spoke French and studied Latin and that kind of thing. But I had a pretty big events happen in my life through mistakes of my own. And this is obviously a very long story, but I was incarcerated. So I actually was incarcerated at the age of 22. And so a lot of my ideas or plans for what I wanted to be when I grew up were very much sidelined. And while I was incarcerated, was very much like this, started to dream more about business and entrepreneurship because I wanted to get out and try to fight to make something for myself and of myself. And so that certainly shaped and changed what I thought I would want to be. I served 15 years. So getting out as a 37-year-old, going back to school to study literature isn't really that smart of an idea, right? Although I do, I'm a little envious when I hear of people like, still pursuing that type of passion or dream. Like I have a friend in Colorado who's studying to be an astrophysicist, and
Yeah.
he's formerly incarcerated. But for me, it was very much like finding marketing. And while I was incarcerated, I got a job at a sign shop because the Utah State Prison does a lot of work for the Department of Transportation, the Department of Education, the Department of Health. And so there's a lot of work there for making signs. There's a print shop. And while I was working there, that's when I kind of started to get this little bug of, I mean, the easiest way to explain is say like you're ordering a sign for a parking lot. You know those little signs when you pull in that says like for customers only?
Yeah.
That's a
Hmm.
that's a 12 by 18 sign. And so what would
Okay.
happen is we'd get somebody who would call in and say, "Hey, I need a 12 by 18 sign that says, do not park here. We will tow your car. This space is for only people from 5 to 3 p.m. and only on Tuesdays." And so then
Hmm.
you're like, "Hey, just so you know, that's like 10 sentences, and that will be this big of writing, like, quarter-inch letters. No one will be
Yeah.
able to read that." And so what was kind of frustrating as the designer is I'm making these signs. I have a sales guy who's taking this order, and I get this little like draft of they've written all this stuff in on a 12 by, like a little mock-up of a 12 by 18. And I'd say,
Yeah.
"Hey guys, you know that this is going to look funny, right?" And so we go back to the customer, and then I start to notice like, hey, the customer is just they 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 have an outcome in mind. They've written the sign that they want, but they actually have an
Yeah.
outcome in mind. And when you know the outcome, it's actually like, oh, well, in the world of signage, I could put a red thing here and I could put these three words and you'll be good. And
Hmm.
it's easy to see, it's easy to know, it's easy. And so that's where kind of like this first like glimpse of what marketing is, of like,
Yeah.
or trying to like understand outcomes and how we could influence those with messaging. It's
Yeah.
started like kind of get me like really influenced in the world of like, oh, I like this marketing stuff. I like this design stuff. I like trying to help people understand what they should do or not. And so that's kind of like
Hmm.
what gave me that bug as I was going through that time.
So you're able to like really simplify things.
Yeah.
Like, did you have that skill before? Was it something you learned, growing up, or was that something that you had to learn when you were doing the sign business?
I've always really liked helping people. And I mean, the other cheesy part of the story is, so I was going to college while I was in prison, and
Hmm.
I met a lot of guys there who wanted to, maybe not, I shouldn't say a lot, but some people want to beat me up for being a know-it-all, right? Like, we're in
Hmm.
class, I know the answer, or I'm trying to tell
Yeah.
somebody how to do something. And initially it was a little bit of friction, like, who's this guy? And don't tell
Yeah.
me what to do. But then when as people started to realize, and I decided to grow up some of this myself, I was 23, 24 years old, is
Hmm.
asking people if they want help before you just tell them what to do, right? This growing up. But realizing that I do have a knack for helping people to understand things if I have given the opportunity. And that's actually
Hmm.
a lot of the work I do in subscriptions now is it feels really big and complex and unwieldy and people aren't sure what to do. Well, let's simplify to like fundamental steps that you need to have in place and get those
Hmm.
right. And trying to find ways to make things that are complex feel more simple is definitely something that I think that I've developed, but is certainly a strength of mine, what I like doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that works in marketing. It works in sales. I think, is it Michael Scott that says, "Kiss, keep it simple, stupid."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, I think it's a skill too, because a lot of marketers think more words the better. And
Sure.
really, if you look at like, especially here in America, I think it's a little bit different in APAC, but especially here in America, people, the shorter the better, the more like minimalistic the better, the more
Right.
like to the point. If I can look at a page or a picture or a sign, in your case, and like understand exactly what it means right off the bat without having to read it and interpret it and find
Right.
out if there's like multiple meanings. I think that it's a skill that you probably acquired over time, and a lot of marketers are still trying to acquire.
The thing that I've also figured out sometimes is the power of repetition. It's like you can have that sign when they park there. You can have a sign on the building that says a little bit more, but that like repeats that
Hmm.
message. And then when they walk into the door, there could be a sign on the door that says, "Hey, did you do this when you parked?" So it's like the idea
Okay.
of marketing is like it doesn't always have to be that one moment or that one touch point.
Yeah.
It can be multiple touch points. You can send follow-up emails. You can show some, you know what I mean? Like that's the other piece I think that helps make all that kind of bring that together.
It's the same thing as a parent too. Like, you can't just tell your kid
Yeah.
one time and like they learn it, especially in the younger age. I love that the idea of putting multiple signs. I'm gonna do that in my house. Hey, hey, put your shoes away, and then like up the stairs, put your shoes away, and then in your room, did you put your shoes away? I love that. That's great.
I would like to apologize to all of Eli's kids right now. Sorry.
They won't listen to this for another 10 years or so.
Okay.
They're
Okay.
fine. Okay, so you go through, you're incarcerated, you're going to college while you're there, you're doing the science stuff while you're there. Now 37 comes, you get out. What's that like? I've never had anybody on the podcast that's been incarcerated, and I don't really, I know a handful of people, but I've never really walked through that. Like emotionally, what did you feel like? Where did you start? And like, how did you get from there to where you're currently at now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was able to get close to earning a degree while I was there. There was a Utah State program there for a while, but I didn't quite finish my undergrad degree. So when I got out, I wanted to finish that, and I ended up transferring to the University of Utah. Most of my credits transferred, but I still was about 2 years in school to kind of get it all done. Working full time and taking 3 or 4 classes, maybe 4 or 5 classes at a time.
Yeah.
I would say it's very much like I just had a good friend that got out recently, and we were joking about this. You're very much everything's exciting. I would say if anybody here or anybody listening's ever watched the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, it's a fun show on Netflix. She's like stuck in a bomb shelter for like 15 years and then gets out,
Yeah.
and how she acts is very much how I act. My family would tease me about that. So very excited, a lot of adrenaline. I slept very little and was never tired. I was just always kind of just jacked up, like I was taking Mountain Dew. But it's also very discouraging and daunting because, I have a cousin my age who had not made bad choices and had a wife and kids and a career and a lot of assets and stuff. And I have met people that were dirtbags and had all kinds of amazing things, and I had nothing. So it's very easy to fall into this of like comparison game,
Yeah.
also feeling like you have to make up lost time. And so that's like some of the advice that I try to give people when they're getting out is you can't judge your life based on the lives of other people. We've all make different choices. And the greatest irony and kind of like the secret for me has been I've met people that are older than me that have never been to prison, that are unhappy, that have had a lot of failures or successes in their life, that recently started a business or found true love for the first time. And so it's like there's so many things of like life is not an accumulation of the actions of like in the sense of what you've earned and what you get. People aren't happy because of something they did 20 years ago. They're happy because of what happened 20 minutes ago, because of the mindset. And so for me, there's actually a little bit of a gift of that kind of perspective of feeling like there's a lot of opportunity out there and that I can go try to make the life I want. Now it's still hard. Finding a job was hard. I was overwhelmed. I didn't realize that, I had my sister, I was about 30 days out and I was getting a lot of interviews, but I couldn't really find something that was good. And she had to kind of sit me down and say, and I started to kind of like really stress out about it, get really upset about it. She's like, hey, finding a job, whether you're a felon or not, is hard. Like it's hard for me. It's hard for everybody. And so I was like, oh, I just had no perspective of that finding a job is hard. I got a job like a week later. So I found a job within like a little over 30 days, which is pretty awesome, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So like that perspective, and I got a job in a sign shop. And so I was able to like transfer some of those skills while I was going to school. It was a really, really positive experience. So, but the other big lesson was, I loved marketing but I was scared as a 37-year-old with the Snapchats and I know I say that to be funny, the Facebook and the Google, like I'm going to be going up against 22-year-olds or 25-year-olds who have a better grasp of the technology, have a better grasp of marketing, and they're just going to blow me out of the water and I'm not going to end up doing it. So I actually got my degree is actually in information systems. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into tech. There's new tech happening all the time. So I won't have to be as competitive because maybe the thing just got invented. But the irony is I end up through networking. And so this is the other lesson is like, I found a job because of someone I had known inside that we'd stayed friends. And I got a job at a company he was a partner at.
Yeah.
So networking got me my first career job at Essential Hub or eHub. And working there, I was just working on some pet projects, and ultimately they ended up moving me into marketing. So
Mhm.
I was avoiding marketing, going into tech, but I ended up following my passion because while I was working there, guess what projects I was always here to jump on? Marketing projects. When they
Mhm.
were like, hey, we're going to put more focus on marketing in this area, who should we have do that? Oh, let's have Matt do that because he loves marketing.
Mhm.
So for me, it was like I try to avoid something, and the truth that I learned in that experience, like through those couple of years of going to school, being worried that I wasn't going to be able to cut it. Well, the truth is there's like millions of marketers out there, and one, they're all a lot of us are all doing different things, so it's not like I'm
Yeah.
competing with every single other marketer on the planet.
Right.
The second thing is there are things that like I've had to learn more. My last few years have been very much a journey of learning where my special set of skills at.
Mhm.
Being a B2B SaaS marketer is great. I was good at it, but I wasn't great at it. What I'm great at is what you just mentioned. It's helping simplify complex things and helping work with someone directly or company directly to figure something out. So
Mhm.
that finding that process and that journey has taken a few years, but as I'm leaning more and more into that part of what I'm passionate about, what I'm really good at, doors just keep opening because that's what I'm great at. That's what I'm really passionate about and what I'm really great at. So for
Yeah.
me, it's very much a journey of like trying to discover those things and not being scared to try new things. The community stuff happened almost like an accident. When I when I left eHub, I was there for a couple of years, and then I wanted to go the entrepreneur route and join a small startup as a co-founder. Qpart is a subscription software platform.
Mhm.
Um, I started a little marketing meetup. JJ came, Taylor
Nice.
Howe, uh, and we were just a handful of us just having breakfast. And
Yeah.
for me, it was just wanting to bring people together so I could ask questions about stuff that I was facing, but similar for them. And then those little breakfasts turned into some lunches. And then next thing you know, Patrick Williams is telling me, you need to do a bigger thing. And I'm like, I've never done a bigger event. So I just
Mhm.
figure out the easiest, simplest way to do it. I invite a bunch of people to be on a panel and we pack a room at Kiln with 60, 70 people.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting and I'm thinking, huh, I wish everything else I'm doing was this simple. And how do I make money off of this? And so then it's like, build a Slack group. And so, yeah, no, it's, 2 years later, fast forward, and the Slack group's got over 800 people in it. We're doing regular events all the time. But really the whole like ethos of that is like helping people, connecting people, and wanting to get my own help access to my own resources. So that's kind of how that all started for
Yeah.
me and why it's built up that way.
Man, there's so much to unpack in everything that
I
you
know I
just
said
said. I'm trying. No, you're fine. Like I'm trying to take mental notes on these questions that I have because I didn't want to interrupt you because you were going really well. Um, okay, so perspective. Like
yes.
you had perspective in the beginning where you were at first you were like, hey, I'm gonna do this. I'm happy. We'll make it work. But then you started to struggle at finding a job, which if it wasn't for your sister, you probably would have continued going down that path. Like I'm just not good enough because I'm a felon. And that wasn't the case. It was just different. Right. And so your perspective, it reminded me of a story that Tony Robbins tells about these twin boys who one of them became wildly successful and one of them I think he was incarcerated, became an alcoholic and really really struggled, and he had these interviewers go and talk to both of them. They went to the guy who was incarcerated first and said, why are you here? Why are you the way you are? And he said, can you imagine having parents like I had that pushed me the way that they pushed me, and they made me do things I didn't want to do, and man, just growing up was just so hard. And then they went and interviewed this business owner, very very successful, and they said, why are you the way you are? And he said, man, I couldn't have done it without my parents who were pushing me the way they pushed me. And they had the exact same scenario, the
Right.
exact same life. They were twins, same age, same school, same everything. And one of them took it and said this is a positive thing, and the other took it and said this is a negative thing. Now I don't know if that's a true story or not, but it shows the idea of perspective and how it can change somebody. And it looks like you had your sister that helped you sort of change that mindset, right?
And some experiences in prison too. When I was about 10 or 11 years in, I had a series of experiences that were a little bit of a wake up call for me and started this idea of, you know, I don't know if I could be happy in prison, but I want to try to build the life that I would have if I wasn't here as best as I
Yeah.
can. And part of that is also accepting like, I think it's just this old adage of like, when you're single and you're lonely and you feel like, oh, if I could only get so and so to talk to me, I would be in love and we'd be happy. It's like
Yeah.
this idea that you think that you could just go make other people do something for you, or that you can just go make the life you want without chance and without all these other
Mm-hmm.
factors. Like, so some of it is certainly like, some of it is part coping mechanism of like, okay, well, this is the cards I've been dealt, you know,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I need to do with my own choices, my life. But at the same time, like, I want to try to take some ownership of that. So I think it's also about trying to find the life that you could build to be happy now, and not
Yeah.
aspirationally like, hey, when I get this promotion, when I land this account, when I get married, or when we go on this trip, I'm finally going to get away or finally going to be happy. And the very
Yeah.
real thing is like, when I'm released, I'm going to be happy. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's that's silly. Like, I want to try to be happy now as best that I can. Now, life is still frustrating. It's still hard. It's still lots of bad things happen, whether you're incarcerated or not. But the truth is you can try to start to own your own happiness that way. And so when I started to do that, it set me up for success when I was out and some of these things were happening and I was facing adversity. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do what I can to be happy and do what I can to that's going to be successful for me. It's definitely part of that mindset of finding that like kind of peace, but also like being it still feeling comfortable reaching, but being happy with who you are.
Yeah. What a perspective shift there, man. Like if anybody's out there listening and you think like your life is hard, this is not to like minimize what people are going through. There's thousands of people, tens of thousands of people who are losing their job,
Right.
and it's so hard, right? So hard for so many of them. But when you hear stories like this, that that you were in prison for 15 years, like try to put yourself in other people's shoes and really try to be grateful for where you're at now, right?
Yeah. And I will say, in many ways, I think prison is actually easier than real life because I didn't have, well, I mean, the truth is like, if I decided I didn't want to get out of bed that day, I still had 3 meals getting delivered to me.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
so I think that the pressure of family and like trying to provide for people is a different kind of pressure and really, really difficult.
Yeah.
But there's just so many gifts that come with that too, right? Like,
For
whether
sure.
it's your health, whether it's the people in your life and it's opportunity. Um, yeah, I think perspective is a really powerful thing. It's the thing I'm trying to teach, our kids around, they're young, but it's the idea of like, perspective is what's going to show you the difference between whether you should be upset right now or not, or what this really means
Yeah.
to you for your life.
Right. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning that you talked about is how you went from like, let's maybe doing it all at this company to like narrowing it down to just you went from like, what would you say, engineering first?
It was more like I got hired as a special projects kind of guy. They were trying to sell some different
Okay.
software, trying to figure some of this different
Yeah.
stuff out. So I actually like never really used my degree from a like coding perspective. It just
Uh-huh.
helps me evaluate software and implement software. Um, but I do think like for anyone trying to figure out a career, like you want to try to find a lead. One, networking is still the number like
Mm-hmm.
and I would say the thing that makes networking effective is having an idea of what you want to do. So what ended up happening is I run into this guy I knew from inside. He was on a walk in the park. I was on a walk in the park. It was very, very fortuitous. Like we'd been friends, we'd stay connected, but we happened to run into each other. He asked,
Yeah.
"What have you been up to?" I tell him I've been doing this really fun e-commerce internship while I'm at school. Oh, interesting. My company's trying to figure out how to scale up some of our e-commerce services. You should come in and talk to the CEO. That's literally what happened.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, I need a job. Because when you tell somebody I'm looking for a job, or even I'm looking for a job in marketing, people don't know how to necessarily filter that. So like when people ask me
Mm-hmm.
for help, and this is something that you want to try to be specific. I'm looking for a job where I'd like to get, I think I'm pretty good at PPC. I'd like to get a job where I can do that. Or I
Yeah.
really like creating content, specifically videos. I'd really like to get a job doing that. So when we can be more specific and you network, then people will be able to filter that through to other opportunities for you. And then when you're
Mm-hmm.
there, it's about saying yes. It's about leaning into some passion. If it's a job necessarily that maybe feels a little dead end, maybe you can hold on to it while you do a side project. But for me, it's very much too like you want to try to find ways to do stuff. So if you love social media and you don't have a company's account to manage, but you don't have a personal social media account that you invest your heart and soul in, to me as a hiring person, that's a red flag. Like,
Mhm.
don't,
Yeah.
if you've worked on other campaigns and you hate social, fine. Like, you have backed up experience. If you don't have experience and you don't have your own thing, what have you been doing the last couple of years? So to me, it's like
Right.
you have to try to find opportunities to build that. And then again, saying yes and putting yourself out there. For me, I got Q Pilot because of a post on LinkedIn. Somebody was saying, "Hey, is anybody interested in joining a small startup as
Yeah.
a marketing co-founder?" Yep, I'd like to learn more
Dang it.
about that. It turns out the subscription app founder was very logistics focused. So my
Mhm.
background in logistics was very appealing.
Nice.
Again, that's those are it's those connection pieces. It's not just like I had a nice smile or I was like
Mhm.
crushed some quiz because those don't happen outside of school.
Networking's huge. It's helped me in a lot of jobs, and I just released a podcast with Caleb Whittle, and that was like his
Yeah.
biggest takeaway. Right, he got his most recent job because of a networking event, with Paul. Right, so Paul introduced him
Oh,
to Private
Paulson. Okay.
Auto. Yeah,
Yeah.
Paul Shin introduced him to Private Auto, and he never would have got that introduction if he wouldn't have gone to some of those networking events that you probably helped put on some of those. Yeah, right. So networking is a huge takeaway. The other thing is, my friend Kristen Whitfeld talks about how there's 3 different steps that she has. One is flow, one is know, and one is go. And the flow is what you work on, what you get into that flow where the things that you love, right? And so you say that you were doing SaaS companies and you were good at it, but it wasn't your flow state, right? And you
Right.
transition from flow and you maybe push that to go or no and said, I'm going to work on this flow state, which is more of subscriptions, right? So let's dive into what you do.
Sure.
What do you do on a daily basis? What wakes you up in the morning? What gets you
Yeah.
excited? And how are you helping companies around subscriptions?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example as part of the story, bringing this all together. So, like, beginning of last year, so about a year ago, I was starting to feel again a little bit unsettled in the typical B2B SaaS role. I love the small startup vibe and I love that energy in my partner, but I was starting to feel a little bit like it's not quite my it's not quite my calling. And
Hmm.
the more time I spend in that, it's like I kept finding, when I do these one-on-ones with a brand to help them understand their data, understand what they could do better on a subscription, that's where I felt really alive and passionate. And people would walk away from a 15, 30 minute hour conversation thinking like, thank you so much. Like this, you just
Hmm.
swept away the cobwebs, you connected the dots, like that kind of thing. And so middle of last year, I decided to step away from that role, at least from a full-time capacity, and start trying to figure a few things out, put on a big Commerce Catalyst event. But starting
Hmm.
like, just this really January this year, like fully invested in trying to build a consultancy around subscriptions. And so I specifically help e-commerce companies selling things like supplements, pet food, beauty brands, um, things that you buy in a repeat purchase basis, like a subscription. And so a lot of the work it's basically like 2 buckets. So I talk to a lot of people that are just getting started. So I literally, before we hopped on this podcast recording, I was talking to a guy who's launched a new brand. It's a couple months old. They're doing really well. Not sure what to do on subscriptions. What should I worry about? What should I be focused on? How do I boost this and grow this? And so a lot of that is like quick some education in this is the stuff to pay attention to. You want post-purchase surveys. You need to make sure you're getting customer feedback. These are the things you want to keep an eye on. So like that's kind of like an educational arming people with. And the other big goal of that is I want to cut away as much noise as possible. Like, don't
Hmm.
worry about this. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about this. Just worry about these things. This is what's going to make you grow. And this is what's going to help the most. And so then when you talk to them, the other bucket is people that are already well advanced with subscriptions. So whether we're talking like, 2,000 subscriptions all the way up to 200,000 subscriptions of brands that are trying to figure out either something's not working, something could be better. So it's really, you could call it optimization. But a lot of that process is really ultimately, it's a really great marketing exercise because the biggest thing is almost always how well do you know your subscriber? How well
Hmm.
do you know what your subscriber values the most? And if you really know the answer to those questions, most people think they do, but there's ways to validate that. Once you really know that,
Hmm.
then what ends up happening, because most subscription brands, you either have a problem where you're really stuck at the retention side, like you're acquiring people like crazy, and then they churn right away, or you're not really acquiring people that quickly, but you're pretty good at retaining them.
Hmm.
So just kind of starting to understand that better lets you go after better, right? So if you know why people stick around and why they love you, that gives you fuel for a better offer, better ads, SEO, right? When
Yeah.
you know when people are leaving, you start testing. The problem is like we need to be acquiring different customers. And so really, it's just about marrying this whole like picture together of like what gets people to stay, why do people come in the door, and building that into like a loop. And that's a lot of what I do from a consulting standpoint.
What are some of the common mistakes you see people making? You mentioned that you'll go talk with them and say, "Don't worry about this, that, and the other." What are some of those things that you find in common with most companies they're doing that they shouldn't focus on?
Yeah, one of the fun things is when you're small and say you only have a single product, you only have one product to worry about. And so one of the mistakes as brands grow, they add more products and they try to sell all of them equally, even though that they don't
Mm,
sell equally and they don't retain. So a
mhm,
big mistake is if you have multiple products on a subscription that you're trying to sell, like if you can you can see this in like opening a recharge portal, you can see very easily like what product is the most popular. It's driving the most revenue. It has the best retention. So let's build a sales funnel for that product because there's not one on the website.
mhm,
That's usually like an easy fix. So it's trying to do too much. The other thing would be trying to make things too complex. Like they're going to get this, and then they're going to get this, and they're going to get this. Like that could be pretty dangerous. And then the other thing would be ignoring another really common one. And this is for brands usually in like that $5 to $15 million range. They're growing really
mhm,
quickly. They're really good at acquisition, and they can't figure out why subscriptions kind of tank is because they're building bundles and offers together that sell really well, but nobody wants to keep them. And
yeah,
so that's where the mistake is understanding like what are you selling? So like a good example of this might like let's just take coffee for example.
okay,
Let's say to lower your acquisition costs or to lower your initial cost offset, you sell a bundle of 3 bags of coffee, 3 different flavors. So you can
mhm,
sell that for $100. Facebook ads, you can acquire people for 60. That's a pretty decent profit margin. What happens in month one? Most people cancel. So
mm,
there are 3 different flavors. Why are people buying them? That's ultimately the question is why are people buying them? Oh, well, they're looking for their new favorite coffee. Well, out of those
mhm,
3, they're going to pick a winner. Do you have a process in place for letting them subscribe to the winner, or do they have to stay subscribed to the 3?
mm,
And so it's like
yeah,
just simple questions like that. So you built a product that is cheap or affordable or profitable for you to acquire somebody, but that's not the best use case for a subscriber, right? Or you're selling something on a discount. So people just subscribe to the discount and then they're gone. And
mhm,
again, so most subscriptions is like a basic thing, like even just a basic coffee company, you subscribe to a single bag, you get 10% off.
yeah,
That's that's okay. That's a starting point. But what can you do to make that just a little bit snazzier? Can you make it a little more on brand? Can you include a second bag free? Can you include free shipping, some content? So to me, it's like always coming back to that offer, why people buy, what makes it valuable, what they like the most of it. So that's like, in a nutshell, I guess, 5 minutes of subscription.
No, I love that. I actually want the next 20 minutes to be about that. So that's, I mean, that's your expertise. I want to dig in. Let's like talk about the tactical stuff. So a lot of my background is in the direct sales industry.
Right.
And you mentioned one thing that sort of struck me in direct sales, there's a lot of really complicated rules. That's if you do this, then you do this, then you get this, then you do that. And like we had some rules in my past company that, were like 11 pages long just around subscriptions.
Right.
How do you go into a company like that that's been around for, 20, 30 years that has all these complex rules and maybe some outdated systems? How do you go in and tweak it without saying you need to redo everything?
Okay, without blowing it all up.
Yeah, because I've had
Yeah.
a lot of people come and say like, "Oh, we can fix that. All you have to do is this, this, and this." And like the systems just never allowed it. So like how do you chunk out piece by piece to make that a successful program?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is like, let's use a metric LTV, lifetime value, right?
Okay.
Or we can think about that as contribution margin, like what's the profitability around that? Like without getting too technical in that, but anybody looking at their business, they're going to be thinking about lifetime value as well as the profitability of that lifetime
Mhm.
revenue. The thing is most businesses are okay at understanding, and this is what I would say, what out of those rules is actually really moving the needle. So like, let's say, for example, this is part of a conversation you and I had a long time ago, but one that actually came up just very recently. Somebody was telling me about a program that they've heard about they're really envious of. Let's say you've got a loyalty program in place, and month
Mm-hmm.
6 is double points or triple points for everybody that you refer to the program.
Mm-hmm.
And that program crushes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You also have a rule in place at month 5, they have to do this, and month 7, they have to do this, and month 4, they have to. Okay. If the month 6 rule is the one that is really boosting sales and LTV, let's evaluate all these rules and see what is actually contributing to a more profitable customer
Mm-hmm.
or a new customer. And so if we can ask those simple questions of those rules, we can start to like rank them. Okay, this really like this, I understand, because like a really common one is like people hate that a lot of brands hate that somebody will subscribe initially and then cancel right away.
Yeah.
Because they're getting that extra discount. They hate that. So they want to put this rule in place to try to stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that rule is making greater friction for the rest of the program, that's a problem. So if we can start to look at what's going to drive the needle on making a customer more profitable or acquiring a new customer, let's start to eliminate other things like any other rules that are going in that process. And so that's where I would
Mm-hmm.
start with something like that. And then getting into like, okay, you can start building tests around that. Like, let's take out some of these things for a cohort or cohorts, and let's look at the lifetime value and see how that is going to change for those products. The other thing that I like looking at as well is not just those types of rules, but what types of products are performing the best, what types of bundles are performing the best. Some brands are really active in upselling, others aren't, but customers are upselling themselves. They're bundling themselves.
Yeah.
So like paying attention to what's happening in the program. If you do a special offer, like for example, like if you were going to do like a big content play or a retreat, for example, like, hey, we're going to take the top 100 sellers and offer a retreat, and it's going to be with so-and-so and all this stuff. Does that cause them to sell more? Does that improve
Mm-hmm.
retention? Right. And so if that is true, then let's do more of those and let's worry less about what we keep people from doing. So I think the biggest thing is like, is just a little bit of a mindset shift of you want to try to uncover or find your best customers. So what are the top 10 or 20% subscribers doing? What is
Mm-hmm.
motivating them? What is activating them? Or just what are they doing that other people aren't? And I want to build a system in place to do more of that. Or at
Mm-hmm.
the worst case, the other 80%, I'm just going to let them run and they're fine. They're break even, or I make a little bit of money, but the 20% is what I'm going to retire on. So I'm going to do everything I can to make more and more money off of that 20%. That's the mindset with a system like that.
Is there an e-commerce company out there that you have analyzed that you think like this is where everyone should be? Like it's the best program, it's an awesome company. Like, is there one that you could go and say, hey, if you're just starting in e-commerce, go model what they have?
It depends. It's like a qualified answer just because it depends on what you're selling.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
honestly, I really I'm a Dollar Shave Club fan because I think that their subscription is a really good example of how easy it is to control things. Like it's really easy to manage like what you're getting or not. A recent one I interviewed on my podcast, I really like is Carnivore Snacks. That's snacks with an X at the end. What I really like about them is they're really good at understanding a couple of key points. They make a really quality product. So it's just meat and salt. So a really quality product. They lean very much in the brand. So it's carnivore snacks, and they're like evangelizing meat for people that feel like meat is being drowned out in a world of vegans and vegetarians. So they're very much on brand with everything they do. And then everything they try to do, their founder or one of their co-founder had worked at Costa. And so for him, he's very motivated by like memberships and what do people value? So the third thing is like, what do people value? So they have a membership program that just crushes. It's like 3 times the LTV. If you're a member and a subscriber, they have 3 times as higher LTV than just a subscriber.
Wow.
And so they've built a membership program that's like access to premium meats that other people can't get because those premium meats are smaller size runs. They don't have as much product. So basically it was like, hey, I've got these other great products, but I can't sell them to everybody. They'll just sell out. Oh, I put them behind a paywall.
Hmm.
I give 5% cash back to anybody that wants it, and they can spend more money and they get cash back. So those are big. Those are kind of the things. Is like your great product, um, leaning into your branding, and understanding what your customers value. That's what makes a great subscription.
I like that. What if, okay, so let's say that I'm an e-commerce company and I don't have a subscription yet. What kind of data do I need to look at to say it's worth it or not worth going in that direction?
Yeah, I would be looking at repeat purchase rate first, see how people are using it. I mean, I think if for most brands, if it's like a consumable product, they're already kind of thinking about that. But let's say you're
Hmm.
selling something like eyeliner, like that women or people are reusing it regularly, but you're just not sure.
Hmm.
So you could look at your repurchase history to see how frequently somebody's buying it. Honestly, it's actually so easy to like kind of just get started. You can test it kind of simply if you're running a landing page and you want to divert some of your ad traffic to a landing page, you can have the widget up on that. You can also
Hmm.
put it up on certain products. Like again, there's some apps there that are free or like 50 or $100 a month to use. I would literally just start testing it just to see what the take rate is. And then the other thing is that I always recommend is you want to start collecting some feedback on post purchase, like why people subscribed and what they're excited about, things like that. And then
Okay.
why people are canceling, what they didn't like, what was wrong with it. Um, I think it's actually really easy to start testing some of that. If anything, the mindset behind subscriptions again is uncovering the most valuable customers, figuring out who's going to keep coming back more and more and more. So even if you're
Yeah.
new, that should be your mentality. Even if you don't necessarily launch subscriptions right away, is I want to try to figure out what my best customers are going to value the most. And so a lot of times that's subscriptions. Sometimes that's something like a membership program where your
Hmm.
people are paying for premium access to products or content or other things. But that's kind of like the mentality of it. It's really not that hard to test, but I want to be able to figure out if people are going to find this valuable. And so sometimes, again, that
Yeah.
might just be like a brand I was talking to recently. They weren't doing discounts, and the only way to get a discount is on a subscription. And so they have people
Hmm.
subscribing to get the discount canceling. And so the question is like, should I quit doing that? Should I keep doing that? And so that can be a little bit confusing, but the idea is they're doing it to start to collect feedback to see who opts into it. But if the only
Yeah.
difference is a discount, you're
It
not
won't last.
differentiating the subscription or not.
Yeah.
It's not valuable enough.
So then, okay, so going down that same path, what about what are some retention tactics to get people to stick around longer? If you get them on that first one, you obviously find out maybe the discount's not the best thing because people are signing up, canceling. Maybe that's a scenario, maybe not. But what are some other things companies can do to improve retention?
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple things, and I'll bucket them according to like these are just general. This first thing is just general best practices. So a lot of
Okay.
brands don't onboard people to the subscription. So they might have like a welcome series for all purchasers, but say let's use that coffee as an example. Um,
Okay.
you're not onboarding somebody to the subscription. They just get an email confirming that they have an order, and then they get an email that they have an order's been shipped, and then they get an email that
Hmm.
their order's been delivered, and then they get the box. So from a subscription standpoint, you're losing some big opportunities here. Okay, in that week period between the order gets made and the shipment arrives, can you send 3 or 4 emails that explain where somebody goes to make a change if they need to, explains where the coffee sourced, what makes it special, something about your brand, your story, the value, the value, right? So like as an example, I Heart Dogs, they donate a portion of every sale to feed shelter pets. Well, let me tell you, when you get an email from them or an order, it tells you how many pets you fed, right? So
Wow.
that's a
Nice.
very
Yeah.
basic or simple, straightforward example of reminding people about it. So we want to onboard people to the subscription. We want to make sure we're leading into the first thing I was saying earlier was like understanding why people are subscribing. I think it's really,
Hmm.
really important. So again, if it's coffee, are people buying your coffee because they're trying to save money, because they like the flavor better, because there's lots of reasons why people make coffee at home as opposed to going out and getting Starbucks.
Hmm.
Do you know some of those top reasons? And that's something you can get from a post-purchase survey and talking to customers.
Hmm.
But then it'll be leaning into that a little bit more. So in that welcome series emails, you can mention, the top 2 reasons or 3 reasons why people do that, or, as part of the unboxing experience. So for example, if you find a lot of people that are first time coffee at home makers as your
Hmm.
typical customer, then maybe you make a little coffee at home kit. And that's the initial subscription product that somebody gets, right? So that's
Yeah.
just like some basic of like, we want to understand who we're getting in there, leading more of the brand and onboarding people. Um, then the other side of that is like starting to understand what is working or not working. So simple things like a really common tactic, which is okay to use, is say like month 2 to month 3, you're going to give somebody a gift or a discount, because what ends up happening is like, first month you lose a little bit, second month you lose more, third month you lose more. And then things usually for most brands slow down in months 4, 5, and 6 on the retention. And then you get to
Yeah.
month 7, 8, 9, and things are kind of like, fairly, you only losing a few percentage points of subscribers every month. But those first few months, you're taking big hits. So the idea is you want to try to get somebody into the months 4 and 5, right? So like the
Hmm.
safe zone, so to speak. So a lot of brands will send a gift or they'll send a discount. And I think that's okay. That's good. Like you can test that to say like the critical part is to let somebody know that they're getting it. Otherwise they might just cancel. So like, hey,
Right.
as a way of saying thank you, we're sending you a special gift this month, or we're giving you 50% off your order this month. That's a good place to start. But ultimately, the best retention hack of all is understanding why people are canceling.
Hmm.
And so, just as an anecdote, Mixers, they're a Utah brand. They've been
Hmm.
growing, they're an amazing team, doing lots of things. So, we were chatting a little over a year ago, and they had a very common subscription problem is that people had too much product. And so they were entertaining this idea of like sending a gift to try to get somebody.
Hmm.
But here's the question, Eli. If people have too much product because they're not using the product,
Hmm.
is a gift or a discount or more free product going to motivate them?
Probably
Right?
not.
The answer is no, or
Yeah.
generally no. So
Yeah.
understanding what's happening. So for mixers, it was a question of a lot of women were skeptical of that it would work, or they didn't know how it was supposed to work or how long it was going to take to work. So they didn't take it, or it
Hmm.
was a new habit. They just didn't have the habit of taking it regularly. So
Yeah.
instead of giving away stuff, Mixers wants us back to the table and it's like, okay, we're going to invest in onboarding our customers more so they know the product. We're going to share stories. We're going to try to get them activated as using the product. That's a
Hmm.
totally different go to market motion than it is like sending an email with a discount or a gift on the next order. So to me, that's the biggest thing is like starting to understand why, because I will say this, there are going to be people that you can't save, people that are just
Yeah.
interested, 5, 10% of those people that are churning just had no shot at
Just
them.
is.
It's
Yeah.
nice that they bought in the first place, but that's it. It's trying to understand what's not working for the people that are on the fence, the people that you could save. That's really where the money's at. And then over time, you can get more sophisticated with how you address people and segment people. But yeah.
Nice. So good. Is there a recommended post purchase survey tool that you have, or do they all work the same, or?
I mean, they don't all necessarily work the same. Like the biggest one is Fairing, but the two that I like recommending the most are No Commerce, KNO,
Okay.
and Bestie. Bestie's an app actually here in Utah, led by Trevor and Mark, two great marketers. I
Nice.
like No Commerce and Bestie because it allows you to segment based on whether somebody had a subscription or not. So you can ask
Hmm.
non-subscribers why they didn't subscribe. You can ask subscribers why they did subscribe, as well
Oh,
as some of
nice.
those other questions. And then you
Yeah.
can use survey tools throughout the life of their subscription. You can survey them periodically about how things are going.
Where do you see the future going for e-commerce and subscriptions? Is it kind of the same? Is there new technologies coming out?
Yeah, there's new tech coming all the time. There's tons of innovation happening. We jokingly call it a bit of an arms race between Recharge, Bold, Skio, Stay, Smarter, Loop. I could keep going and going. I'm sorry if I
Yeah.
left your app out. Yotpo's doing some really interesting things too.
Nice.
It's essentially you're seeing people that are either trying to build more and more features on their system, like say Yotpo and Recharge are trying to build out as much as they can. So like Yotpo, you can do email, SMS, you can run your loyalty programs, you can run subscriptions. Recharge is trying to offer loyalty as well. In addition, you're going to see brands that are gravitating towards those all-in-one solutions. You're going to see people that are gravitating towards like really specific. They're really good at this
Yeah.
types of solutions. I think what's exciting about subscriptions is that the customer experience is just getting better and better. All these
Hmm.
portals are really easier to use. I think what's going to happen more and more in the future, though, is there's going to be an element of an even greater automation involved. So what we've seen in our research is, you remember the whole Internet of Things idea of
Hmm.
like, your fridge is going to know when you're low on a water filter and order it for you
Yeah.
automatically. And
Yep.
so what we've seen at scale, and this is some of my conversations with like enterprise level companies that are doing, um, that are like Fortune 500 companies, is the idea is not everybody wants automation. Some people like control.
Hmm.
So, so for example, on the water filter issue, some people are going to be perfectly happy with the fridge automatically ordering the filter. When it shows
Right.
up, they're like, oh yeah, and they replace it. Other
Hmm.
people are going to want to get pinged by the fridge to say, it's time to automate. It's time to reorder. Do you want to reorder? Yes or no?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I'm seeing a branch of that, of like those types of experiences to continue to automate. So even with pet food, just something as simple as, hey, your order's coming. Do you need to make a change? Nope.
Hmm.
Boom, done. Or if you need to make a change, this is already happening right in the text. You can double the order, you could delay it a week. And so that
Yeah.
innovation automation is going to continue to happen as we layer in like personal automated assistants and AI and stuff like that,
Hmm.
just become more and more intuitive. There's still going to be a human control element because a lot of people aren't just going to want to let that go, but that's where I see it going. It's really exciting.
Do you feel like people or companies are afraid to send that like quick follow up, like,
Yeah.
hey, your order's coming, do you need a change? Because they fear maybe they're their assumption is that people are on subscription because they have just forgotten and it just happens. And if I remind them, they're going to cancel. Is that a fear you come across
Yeah.
often?
So if you think about it, like there's two things that are happening at the same time that are opposite data points. So if you send text reminding somebody about an order, your churn numbers will go up.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll lose more subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
The same time we see data where somebody makes a change, their LTV, if somebody makes just a couple, like three changes to the frequency, like how often they're getting it, they're at
Yeah.
200% higher LTV than people that don't make changes.
Holy cow.
So those two things are happening. So
Mm-hmm.
the trend is most brands are not, a lot of brands are not sending uh, SMS. They're just relying on email because that's like the law.
Yeah.
Um, and email also allows you to get a little bit more like in a text, you can't say this big long thing about, well, remember you bought this because you wanted to, lose weight and transform your life and get out
Right.
there this summer.
Yeah.
You can only send like one line and then the thing. Whereas an email, you can be a little bit more like, hey, it's summertime. Like, how's the weight loss going? Like, do you want some extra resources? Oh, by the way, your order's coming. Like, so it allows you to be a little
Yeah.
bit more crafty. Um, but so I would say if your business is getting crushed because the SMS message is going out, you have a different problem to look at. Like, people don't see
Hmm.
enough value. And so there's things that you should be doing a little bit differently to demonstrate more values. Every time you send a message that, yes, you will see a small churn spike. Hopefully it's not a big churn spike. So the idea is you want to try to rely on um, building a better, like, demonstrating value for people so that they're going to be
Yeah.
less likely to subscribe. Uh, and then also coming back to this other idea of I can be okay losing subscribers if I'm acquiring more and more of the really valuable subscribers. So if I'm losing you in month 3, but I acquire 3 of the people that are going to be around for 12 months, I'll make that trade
Good.
all day long.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we want to try to build that methodology and have that mindset.
Man, that's powerful. That's some really good stuff. I mean, I've been in subscription for a long time and e-commerce for a long time, and I learned a lot today. So I appreciate you taking the
Thanks.
time and
That means a lot. Thank you.
hopefully a lot of people listening find value in it too. So at the end of every podcast, I ask two different questions.
Okay.
And so the first one is if you could go back to your younger self and give advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I will say, Eli, I have this discussion with my wife periodically. I'm tearing up just thinking about it a little bit. I don't know that I would like myself as much as I do now if I hadn't been through what I've been through.
Hmm.
Because, like I said, I made the joke about being a pretentious kid and that literature stuff. I thought I had it all figured out. I was a bit of a prick, and maybe that would have continued without being humbled and some other things happening. So
Yeah.
I have a hard time saying like if my life would have been better if I hadn't been incarcerated and made those mistakes. Um, it certainly has affected other people, so I don't want to minimize that at all. But I don't know. I think I think for me, like it would be perspective. Like your life is not made up in any single moment. I had a lot of pressure on myself. I grew up in the church in
Hmm.
California, so there's a lot of pressure to be perfect
Yeah.
and try to be that person. And for me, a lot of my happiness has come from realizing that making good choices, I have my conscience and I have friends and family that help influence those things. And I know what's right and I should just go do that. So I
Yeah.
think like just learning to reminding myself to trust myself more as a kid probably would have gone a long way and to relax because it's a long life. It's a long life.
Yeah. That's good. That's great. Okay. Second question is, do you have any books, podcasts, or leaders that currently inspire you?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Dave Gerhardt in the marketing world. He has heavily, heavily influenced me the last few years as somebody who's like trying to figure that all out and getting into all of that. He's got a podcast, Exit 5 Community is his name of his group and content community. He's very, very good at keeping things simple.
Nice.
I remember one day somebody was saying they were criticizing the company currently he was working at and his the hero section on his website had all the horrible CRO tactics, too much text, too many pictures. It was this big whole thing. And he just said
Yeah.
to people criticizing that, hey, it converts.
Yeah.
What are you going to say? So the idea sometimes is like with him, it's like you can, yes, you want to be foundationally smart at your marketing, but don't be afraid to try different things and just to do what you think works and test it and see if it works. And so I'm a huge fan of his.
That's good. I love that. How can people get in touch with you, Matt, if they want to reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. Look for me, Matthew Holman, on LinkedIn. I also have a website, thesubscriptiondoc.com. That's where you can access my newsletter and podcast and consulting and stuff too.
Man, I knew I was looking forward to this for a reason. Some really good nuggets in there.
Thanks,
I
man.
appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully the audience finds it just as valuable as I did. So appreciate
I
your time.
appreciate
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And everyone listening, have a good week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.